My faith's in people, I guess. Individuals. And I'm happy to say that for the most part, they haven't let me down.
10 years ago. That feels insane to say, but let's go back in time. Take yourself back to 2015. We were in the midst of the Marvel Infinity Saga. Age of Ultron came out this year, so did Ant-Man. It was an age of cinema I don't think we'll ever really see again, because well, cinema feels like it's in a bit of a freefall right now, and we've not seen anything record-breaking like we did in 2019 since. 2019 was a year that we saw 9 different films gross over $1 billion at the box office. That's more than any other year in history. The global cinema industry has experienced a noticeable downturn. Avengers Endgame capped off an era of unprecedented box office success, even becoming the highest grossing film of all time upon release, and then we had the Avatar nonsense. But in the years since Endgame, exacerbated by a virus, movie theatres have struggled to recapture that level of audience turnout. 3 key factors that we're going to cover in this video today are going to look at the decline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, reducing the draw of the cinema in general.
How are we going to hold this year's orgy?
The rise of streaming services offering home premieres, and finally an increase in digital piracy. So, if you've not got your snacks or a drink, feel free to go get them and let's get into it. So the Marvel Cinematic Universe was arguably the engine driving pre-2020 box office growth. During Phase 3 of the MCU, 2016 to 2019, Marvel was at the peak of its power. 11 films averaged $1.24 billion worldwide, with 6 of them crossing the coveted $1 billion mark. In fact, all the Marvel movies up to Endgame, in terms of their worldwide box office, averaged $970 million. Endgame itself nearly hit $3 billion globally. Even the smaller titles, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, pulled in over $600 million. To put that a bit in perspective, Man of Steel only hit $668 million worldwide, and that's Superman versus a guy called Ant-Man. This just cements the fact that every film in 2018-19 especially felt like a must-see cultural event. This success led to many families and fans frequenting theatres so much, I think, that it would lead to these families purchasing like season passes or unlimited ticket plans, which correlates to the increase in overall box office for all movies during this time, I think. Now, 2019 alone had 9 $1 billion worldwide box office movies, and in the last 5 years, we've had 11. So after 2019, the MCU's box office has faded. Phase 4, 2021 to 2022, only had one movie that broke the $1 billion threshold, and that was Spider-Man, which is shared with Sony. Meanwhile, other installments significantly underperformed previous MCU standards, like Black Widow only earning $380 million and Eternals $402. Even a big draw like Thor couldn't hit a bill, but that might be down to the standard of that movie. And Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, just shy of $1 billion as well.
You serious?
Whereas if this were in 2016-2019, I think both those movies would easily have hit $1 billion. As I mentioned, they were seen as cultural events. You couldn't miss a movie or you'd risk missing links to the big bad villain or the overarching story, and that's kind of been lost now. Now, Phase 5 has fared no better. Early entries like Ant-Man and the Wasp collapsed under $500 million. The Marvels, that became the biggest box office bomb in the MCU history, limping to just $200 million. Multiple factors contributed to Marvel's decline. One is superhero fatigue. After the enormous climax of Endgame, casual viewers have been less compelled to watch every new chapter. It felt like the end of the story really to a lot of people. The MCU's interconnected narrative continues though, but without Iron Man or Captain America headlining, newer characters haven't really drawn the same consistent crowds. Additionally, quality and reception have become erratic. Some post-Endgame films and shows received mixed or poor reviews, undermining the once sterling Marvel brand. Marvel Studios also shifted focus to Disney Plus series, alongside films, creating a flood of new content that left many fans overwhelmed or fatigued, as these shows, to me anyway, and I think a lot of others, felt like homework, and they were a bit of a slog to get through, and I gave up at She-Hulk.
You obliterated
the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Crucially, Marvel's missteps have directly impacted theatre attendance. For much of the 2010s, a steady stream of must-see Marvel releases kept moviegoers coming back multiple times a year. By contrast, in the last few years, Marvel installments have failed to meet expectations or generate repeat viewings. For instance, 2023's Ant-Man 3 and the Marvels both fell off sharply. The Marvels, as mentioned, made $925 million less than 2019's Captain Marvel. That's almost $1 billion drop for a sequel. If that doesn't tell you fans have lost interest, I don't know what will. It didn't help that they added 2 other main characters to the movie from Marvel shows that no one really watched. As an aside, beyond Marvel, Disney's other flagship franchises have similarly faltered, contributing to the general loss of trust in big IP movies, resulting in less people going to the movies regularly for repeat viewings or to see their favourite franchises. Star Wars is a prime example. Fan goodwill took a hit in the divisive Star Wars The Last Jedi in 2017. And then Solo, a Star Wars story, that outright flopped, becoming the first Star Wars movie to lose money. This shocked Disney. Solo's opening weekend and a total gross were roughly half of what a Star Wars spin-off should have made. In response, Lucasfilm halted its aggressive release schedule, and after Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker limped to a disappointing finish in 2019 despite still grossing $1 billion, it earned scathing fan feedback. Disney effectively paused Star Wars theatrical releases altogether, and instead it seems they're focusing on the shows.
That's not how the Force works.
Power of one, the power of two, the power of many. The power of one.
Now, Lucasfilm hasn't shot a feature film since 2019, unless you count Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which was horrible and also a flop, losing an estimated $140 million. Instead, the studio shifted focus to safer streaming series. In other words, one of the biggest franchises on the planet essentially retreated from cinemas for the past 5 years. That's a remarkable indication of how low their confidence is. This ongoing decline of Disney brands, Marvel, Star Wars, has undeniably contributed to fewer theatre visits, and long-time fans that once automatically saw each new chapter, they now have their reservations and they'll approach each film with skepticism. They might even lean towards piracy or skip the theatrical run and just wait for it to come out on Disney Plus in 3 to 4 months. It's worth noting that the creative choices play a role in the audience pullback as well. Disney in particular has faced a lot of backlash with its heavy output of live-action remakes, sequels, and the perceived agenda-driven storytelling, which a lot of viewers feel have come at the expense of the quality of the shows. As one commentator put it, Disney's over-reliance on poorly written prequels and sequels, a largely unsuccessful live-action remake project, and perhaps most crucially, the increasing over-feminization and wokeification of its products ended up driving many fans away. In plainer terms, many big franchise films in recent years have been criticised as formulaic, creatively bankrupt, and/or pandering. The Snow White remake becomes a flashpoint in 2023. Leaked set photos and cast and plot details featuring a modern girl boss reinterpretation of Snow White triggered massive online ridicule and proved to be the beginning of the end of the general goodwill towards Disney for a lot of people. In interviews, the lead actress openly disparaged the classic 1937 Snow White as outdated and confirmed audience fears that the new film would turn its cherished heroine into an ass-kicking girl boss who doesn't need no man to save her.
I'm a narcissist.
The controversy, alongside a string of creative misfires, solidified a perception that Disney storytelling had become too ideologically driven and too out of touch with fans. Even Marvel releases were not immune to this backlash. Marvel's Captain America Brave New World reportedly saw a domestic audience drop of 70% in its second weekend. To put that in perspective, that is worse than Ant-Man 3, which is the previous record holder for the weakest Marvel sequel. In conclusion for this chapter, the post-Endgame era has seen a franchise fatigue set in across Hollywood's biggest series, especially those under Disney's umbrella. Some analysts argue that this isn't just superhero fatigue but a broader audience apathy towards franchises that feel stale or preachy. When passionate fans no longer trust a franchise to deliver a satisfying experience, well, they're less willing to make the effort and pay the ever-rising ticket prices to see that film or any others in theaters. And that brings us to the next key factor. Now, the virus accelerated a trend that was already underway, the shift towards streaming platforms for new releases. In 2020, the pandemic forced theatres worldwide to shut down for months, causing the global box office to drop by billions of dollars, essentially overnight. At the same time, home streaming surged in popularity as lockdown consumers turned to Netflix, Disney+, HBO Max, and various others. With traditional distribution upended, studios experimented with new release models that fundamentally changed the theatrical landscape. One major change was the advent of simultaneous streaming releases, or very short theatrical windows for big films, something almost unheard of pre-2020. For example, Disney launched Premier Access on Disney+, letting subscribers watch new films at home for an extra fee for the same day they hit cinemas. Black Widow, July 2021, was a high-profile case. Disney released this Marvel tentpole in theaters and on Disney Plus for nearly $30, roughly about £20 in the UK. At the same time, many families jumped at the chance to essentially go to the cinema at home. £20 for a household viewing can be far cheaper than buying several theatre tickets and concessions, but this convenience came at the cost to theatres. Those viewings replaced what otherwise would have been ticket sales. Indeed, Black Widow theatrical gross stalled at $377 million globally, by far the lowest for an MCU origin movie, and it suffered a dramatic 67% second week drop in US theatres. That's the worst Friday to Friday drop in MCU history. The implication was that many who might have gone to see it on the second weekend had already seen it at home, on Disney Plus, or maybe even at a friend's house. The Black Widow release also ignited industry debate over contracts and fairness. Star Scarlett Johansson famously sued Disney in 2021, alleging that the streaming release cannibalized the box office, to which her bonus was tied, and breached her contract. The very existence of that lawsuit underscored how dramatically the norms had shifted. An A-list Marvel star felt compelled to litigate because her film was not exclusively in theaters. Disney ultimately settled with Johansson for a reported $40 million, but this sent a message to Hollywood about the financial ramifications of streaming, and this can be seen by how long the home premieres now take the hit streaming platforms. Now, Disney was not alone. Warner Bros. Took the drastic step of putting all its 2021 films on streaming HBO Max day and date with theaters, a move that outraged many filmmakers and cinema chains.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
While that was a one-year experiment, the broader trend of shortened theatrical windows has stuck. Where pre-virus a major film might play exclusively in cinemas for 75 to 90 days, now some hit streaming in as little as 17 to 30 days after a theatrical debut. This means audiences know they can see new movies at home relatively soon, perhaps even reducing the urgency to go out to the theatre. This turns the film into sort of a non-event. The convenience and cost savings of streaming have undeniably lured people away from cinemas. During the virus, millions upgraded their home entertainment setups and grew accustomed to on-demand instant access. Even as theatres reopened, the appeal of watching from one's couch remains strong. Being able to pause at will, avoid crowds, not pay £10 or $15 per ticket, especially with how salary increases year on year are struggling to contend with things like inflation. Studios feeding content directly to streaming as well, or quickly after theatres, effectively trained consumers to wait. Let's quickly look at Megan 2.0, because this came up in the news recently. Not even a month after its release, it's on Amazon's home release in the US. Families on a budget, and that's a lot of families right now, might decide then rather than spend, say, £50, $50 on a theatre outing, they'll wait a few weeks and catch the film on Disney Plus or Amazon for free, or for a small rental fee. The result? Lower theatrical attendance, especially for mid-tier releases and those that have mixed reviews or word-of-mouth opinions. It's telling that in 2021 and 2022, some films made more money via on-demand services than in theatres. Universal's Trolls World Tour went straight to digital rental in spring 2020 and grossed $100 million in premium on-demand fees, kickstarting talk that certain family films might skip theatre runs entirely. Disney's Mulan and Pixar's Soul were released primarily on streaming, while big superhero movies did return exclusively to cinemas by late 2021. The mindset of studios and audiences had shifted to streaming first in many cases. From the consumer's perspective, streaming has become a preferable alternative. Some cinephiles once went weekly to movies. Now they might stay at home scrolling a streaming library for something new. Theatres have had to contend not just with fewer blockbuster tentpoles, as schedules thinned out during the virus and after, but with the fact that those blockbusters are often available at home either immediately or very soon after. Thus, even when movies are of interest, a portion of potential viewers who are on the fence decide to wait for streaming, reducing the momentum of theatrical runs. I myself done this with Captain America Brave New World, as it didn't sell me on being worth my money or time. And I was right. The movie would have left me leaving the cinema feeling very critical of how far Marvel had fallen. Speaking of Marvel again, in the case of Black Widow, it illustrates how streaming availability can directly siphon theatre revenue. But even beyond simultaneous releases, the proliferation of high-quality content on platforms has made the theatre outing less dominant choice. When a year's content slate is filled with Marvel/Star Wars shows, Netflix originals, audiences might feel satiated without ever buying a movie ticket. To draw them out of the house now often requires something truly special, like a crossover event, or Top Gun Maverick nostalgia, or the social media-fueled Barbenheimer phenomenon. Whereas pre-2020, a steady drumbeat of Marvel installments alone was enough to keep the theatre busy. In summary, the streaming revolution following the virus changed consumer habits and reduced theatrical exclusivity, leading to fewer cinema visits. Studios effectively gave audiences the option to watch big films at home, and many took them up on it. This industry pivot, intended to sustain Hollywood during lockdowns, has had a lingering effect. People now expect quick home access, and some have internalised the convenience of streaming over cinema. Combined with the loss of trust in big studios and possibly superhero, prequel, sequel, live-action remake fatigue, this means that even as the virus is well past the horizon, theatres have not rebounded to 2019 levels of attendance. Alright, thanks very much for watching so far. If you're enjoying the breakdown, do me a favour and hit the like button and subscribe if you're new, which most of you will be because I'm relatively new to this. And leave a comment down below to let me know what you think of the video and what I got right, what I got wrong, because I'm still learning this and it's appreciated. Alright, back to it. And on the last segment of this video, let's look at piracy. An often overlooked factor in the declining box office receipts is the resurgence of online piracy. Over the past few years, piracy of films and TV shows has spiked, and it's tied in part to the same dynamics discussed previously. Viewer frustration with content quality and the proliferation of streaming services. When people either can't or won't access a film through official channels, some will turn to illegal downloads/streams, which obviously will divert viewership away from theatres and other legitimate platforms. Notably, industry data shows a sharp rise in digital piracy since 2021. According to Musso, a UK-based piracy analytics firm, global visits to pirate sites surged to 215 billion in 2022. That's almost a 22% increase over the same period in 2021. Now, specifically for film content, piracy activity actually jumped nearly 39% year on year. In 2022, a staggering growth after what might have been a declining trend pre-pandemic, anti-piracy authorities have noted that despite crackdowns, illegal streaming is booming in the post-COVID era. Now, what's driving the boom in piracy? Well, it's multiple compounding factors. One is the fragmentation of content across streaming platforms. In the past, a consumer might pay for cable in the US or Sky TV in the UK, one streaming service, and have access to a huge range of movies. Now content is siloed. You want it free on another platform? Tough luck. HBO Max has Warner Brothers, Amazon, etc, etc. To legally watch all these popular shows and films, a person would need to maintain 5 to 6 separate subscriptions or purchase the movies, which is expensive. Many have responded by subscribing to fewer services and pirating titles that aren't on their platform. Musso's data explicitly links the piracy uptick to releases being increasingly exclusive to a large number of legal subscription platforms, combined with global inflationary and economic pressures. In other words, with more content locked behind paywalls and households facing tighter budgets, as I've mentioned already, a significant audience segment is choosing to download or stream illicit copies rather than pay for yet another subscription. Another factor is the aforementioned shrinking theatrical window and hybrid releases. When movies hit digital platforms earlier, or sometimes immediately, high quality copies become quickly available for pirates to redistribute. For example, the very day Black Widow released on Disney Plus in 4K, pirated 4K rips appeared online. The same happened with Warner's 2021 slate. The moment a film dropped on HBO Max, it was on torrent sites in full HD. This easy availability of near official quality pirated versions has undoubtedly tempted people who might otherwise have paid for a ticket or rental. Essentially, the industry's pivot to digital distribution also fed the piracy ecosystem content in pristine format. Crucially, there's also an emotional component. Audiences' disenchantment with Hollywood's content has led to apathy about supporting it financially. Some fans rationalize piracy by saying they don't want to give money to studios for movies they deem poor or too agenda-driven. Indeed, commentators have observed that a subset of viewers have become so fed up with certain franchises and trends that they have lost interest and stopped watching altogether, or prefer to watch YouTube reviews instead, which, funnily enough, I've started dabbling in. As The Spectator notes, many people are so fed up with seeing political ideology shoved into almost every piece of entertainment, not to mention poor writing and the death of original media, that they've disengaged from new releases. I have touched on this in another video that I done, around big IPs also dominating cinema, and potentially this is also a correlation with the declining ticket sales. Sinners is a great example of audiences craving something new instead of a live action remake, a sequel, a prequel, a spin-off, or the next movie in a cinematic universe, and I think that's more of what cinema needs. Now, while some simply wait, others might want to watch the content but refuse to pay for it, turning to piracy as a form of protest or cost-free alternative. This is an undercurrent in online discourse. For example, When a highly anticipated film disappoints, say a beloved franchise sequel that the fans find boring or preachy, piracy forums often seen an uptick in comments along the lines of "glad I didn't pay for this. In fact, I actually saw this myself." Recently on a Facebook group that came across my feed, there was loads of people mentioning the Snyderverse because the new Superman movie came out. I went into the page and there were several comments around people watching Man of Steel instead of the Superman movie, and there was also several posts about people watching the new Superman movie but not paying for it. So it's difficult to measure exactly how piracy has cannibalised theatre attendance, but the trend is significant enough that it likely has a huge impact.
And billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions.
In summary, piracy's resurgence is both a symptom and cause of Hollywood's current woes. While exact figures are hard to pin down, the industry is certainly aware of this feedback loop. For instance, when piracy rates jumped, studios began re-emphasizing theatrical exclusives, simply to delay the digital copy being available sooner for pirates. But reversing the tide is challenging. Once consumers get used to free, on-demand content, legal or not, it's hard to entice them back to pay £10 or $15 for a ticket. The only way to do this is the magic that Marvel once had, is you make the movie seem like an unmissable cultural event, and you look to see the future movies. And looking at a lot of movies, this isn't coming back anytime soon. So to conclude this video, the downturn in cinema going since Endgame is not due to any single cause, but rather a confluence of trends that all hit around the same time. The Marvel Disney content machine has slowed and stuttered, providing few mega hits and more lackluster installments, which has diminished one reliable incentive for moviegoers. At the same time, the streaming revolution fundamentally changed consumer expectations, making it possible and often preferable to enjoy new films from the comfort of your home, whether through official platforms or otherwise. And underlying these is the current audience fatigue and frustrations. After years of sequels, prequels, reboots and nostalgia bait hype, viewers have grown more selective with their time and money. Some of the most loyal fans feel burned by declining quality or heavy-handed messaging in their favourite franchise, leading them to disengage, or even turn to piracy rather than paying for a disappointing sequel. These factors feed into each other. For example, a family might skip the new Marvel movie in theatres because reviews were mediocre, deciding to wait for Disney+. Or perhaps the teen in the family who really wanted to go see it has already pirated a copy on their laptop. The outcome in each case, one less trip to the cinema, multiplied across millions of consumers. The net effect has been stark, and even as the virus effect fades, the US and the UK, theatre admissions and global box office totals remain well below the highs of 2019, where the total global box office hit a record $42 billion. While improving, it has not reached the pre-pandemic benchmark. The number of $1 billion blockbuster films dropped from 9 in 2019 to essentially 0 in 2020 and 2021, and we've only had a handful in 2022 and 2023. The fallout was already visible. Theatres have had to get creative. Premium formats, dine-in experiences to lure people back, and studios are rethinking strategies. Disney has reportedly slowed its franchise output to refocus on quality after acknowledging audience fatigue, but they've been saying that for years. Whether the upcoming slate of blockbusters can revive the cinematic excitement of the late 2010s remains to be seen. There are hopeful signs. Events like Spider-Man No Way Home and the cultural phenomenon of Barbie showed that if you give people something novel or nostalgic and well received, they will show up, but it's likely that going forward audiences will be more discerning. The era when Marvel could release 3 movies a year and each would reliably gross near $1 billion, that appears to be over. In its place is a movie fragmented landscape where studios must earn viewers' attention with either truly compelling content or accept that many will happily wait and watch at home. Fantastic Four is a good example of this, so is Superman. The marketing has been very heavy-handed and you could tell that they were trying to get people to the cinema, whereas before, you wouldn't really need to do that, you would just know people would show up. That time's long gone. In essence, the post-Endgame cinema slump was born of a perfect storm. The end of a powerhouse saga and a dip in franchise quality coincided with a virus that normalised home viewing, all against the backdrop of increasing costs, increasing options. The result has seen fewer people make the trip to the movie theatre. Reversing this trend may require a combination of improved content to rebuild the trust and excitement, strategic release models balancing theatrical and streaming, and perhaps a bit of luck in capturing the zeitgeist as Marvel once did. For now though, it's clear that the industry cannot simply bank on Marvel or Star Wars to carry the box office like they used to. Nor can it ignore that many would-be customers are staying home. Whether logged into Netflix or trolling the high seas, each of the 3 factors discussed has chipped away at cinema's attendance, and together they have fundamentally reshaped how audiences consume movies. If you watch this all the way through, it's greatly appreciated, and I'm really enjoying doing this and I'm learning a lot. Anyway, have a great day. Cheerio.